Hey everybody, Jordan Belfort here, the Wolf of Wall Street in the Wolf's Den. I am back. You know, there was no episode last week. Why? I was on vacation and I had an episode in the can and I just decided, maybe I'm not going to release that episode because I thought it was a little bit off brand. Said, let's give it a break. And also, I knew that I was going to have an incredibly amazing guest on this week. Someone that I think is going to be one of my favorite guests of all time. It's a woman. It's a very brilliant woman who is a doctor, and she is a researcher. She has one of the most incredible stories about the use of cannabis to save a life, and that life was her own son's life. And normally when people say that, you're like, oh yeah, let me guess, they gave him some oil. And this is from a doctor who's like literally credentialed through the roof, who has a very sober view on the whole thing. Who's not like running around now saying, I have the cure, because not at all. She's not like that. She's the opposite. She's saying what I saw makes it a mandate for me to warrant the proper research and the proper vetting of molecules, of certain types of alkaloids, things that, she'll tell you more about this. This needs to be investigated. This needs to be proven in a very scientific way, in a way that doctors and researchers will say, it's unequivocal. Her name is Dr. Annabelle, and her full name is very long. It's Dr. Annabelle
Manalo Morgan.
Okay, it's not that bad.
Not
Dr.
bad.
Annabelle Manalo Morgan. She's got an awesome husband, by the way, who's like a Grammy winner. Gramps, who's an incredible musician. Check out his stuff. By a little plug for Gramps there. He's sitting in the back. And Gramps is also a big fucking guy, man. I got to get on Gramps' good side, right? But Dr. Annabelle also is head of the medical advisory board of a company named Flora Growth, which trades on NASDAQ. It's recently had a meteoric rise in price for some pretty interesting reasons. But I want to, before we get into that and talk about the company, her impact on the company, why the stock is going up, I want to first start, Dr. Annabelle, with your personal story. We'll get there in just 1 second. If you're a business owner, you don't need me to tell you that running a business is tough. Don't let QuickBooks and spreadsheets slow you down anymore. Now is the time to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle, the world's #1 cloud-based business system. Schedule your free product tour right now at netsuite.com/wolf. That's netsuite.com/wolf. All right, so Dr. Annabelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jordan. Happy to be here.
You're like the perfect storm. I mean, you have everything going for you in terms of credibility. You present yourself well. Tell us the story. Just, let's get, first of all, stop. What are your credentials?
So I'm a cell and developmental biologist, background in neuroscience, I have doctorates in that. Majored biology and chemistry, clinical trial certification.
Like me, the biochem major. Right?
Exactly. I think that's where we connect.
Right.
But most of my path in the science game has been in cardio-oncology, which is looking at chemotherapies and their offset effects, especially in the heart, and how they are cardiotoxic, and also in neuroscience. So the journey in cannabis was not expected at all.
How many years have you studied this stuff before you got involved in cannabis?
10. So I'm 37, so it's about right.
10 years. Okay, so Tell us what happened. What got you involved in the whole world of cannabis?
I was finishing a cardio-oncology project 7 years in. We were about to get heavily audited, as you can imagine, looking at chemotherapies. And I was pregnant in the lab with my third child, a little boy named Macario. So went over to the hospital, had him, everything was fine. Went home, and Gramps, my husband, noticed that he was foaming at the mouth and he was twitching, which we found out later was he was having uncontrollable seizures. So Macario had a stroke. To this day, we don't know how, when, or why. And ultimately, that wasn't the problem. The problem were these seizures that were not stopping. They did every regimen you can imagine, medically induced coma. Remember, this is a 1-day-old baby, right? So this was just a shock. And ultimately, they removed 40% of his brain. So he had all of his occipital lobe on the left side, all of his temporal lobe. So really just a
Occipital is usually used for vision, is correct?
Vision, but so much more, depth perception, your ability to grasp onto things. And the brain is very connected, right?
Sure.
So even though you think, well, this part is for that.
Right, but it's known
there's a lot of overlap.
It's known that the primary function of vision occurs in that area, right?
Yes, you would think he would not be able to see with his right eye because he's missing the entire occipital
Right,
lobe.
so they removed all of that.
All of it, yes.
Temporal lobe normally is
Communication.
Broca's area,
focus.
recognizing words, creating words.
Yeah, and also depth perception, object perception. So he may go to pick something up and really, grab to the left of it because he would not. It's so much more than being able to see it, right?
Got it. So this all happened, and the remedy they came up with, the doctors, was to remove 40% of his brains to stop the seizures.
Stop the seizures. We knew that the focal point came from the left back brain, so let's just remove it. Let's remove it so that it doesn't do what's called a kindling effect, which is more so a domino effect that could take over the rest of his brain. What kind of quality of life would he have at that point, right? So we agreed to let them do it. They did it. It was a 9-hour surgery. Macario flatlined a few times, had 3 blood transfusions. But came out of the surgery, and we were just told that, the surgery's never been done before, so, let's put him in therapy. He's 2 months old. We're taking him to therapy just so they can move him around. He has a G-tube because he never learned how to eat on his own, obviously. And he was very much a zombie child. And me, as I was not a scientist, I was a mother, and just trying to really give love and support and really took on the role that I might have a child that's going to be very challenged, right? He turned 6 months old, and I think just something clicked in my head where I was like, man, he's not developing. He's 6 months old. He's no different than a newborn baby. He can't even track me around the room. He's not crying. I've got to do something. I've got nothing to lose, and maybe this is why I'm a scientist. So started reading and studying, and what a lot of people don't realize is scientists aren't just in the lab with pipettes and playing with molecules. 90% of that work is done through researching.
Sure.
Reading, right? You're researching what other scientists have done, you create a hypothesis, and then you get into the lab and do work. So that's what I did, but I did it on some mutant level. I mean, I'm studying and reading and just committed to finding an alternative for my son who's on 7 medications, who's a zombie child that I knew developmentally was still going to be like this at 5 years old if we carried on in this way. So long story short, I found cannabis, and not through Google, but through PubMed. I found research papers from Israel and Japan and had to translate some. And yes, the research sucked. I mean, it was like observational studies of 7 people that smoked weed and they felt better. I mean, it was really that bad. But molecularly, there were clues. There were hints, and of course, in science, nothing's ever complete. So I started putting together all of these clues. A lot came from Israel, which is, essentially the grandfather of cannabis. And I started putting it together. I said, man, I think CBD could help my son.
CBD, for those that don't know, meaning the non-psychoactive portion of the plant, right?
That's right.
Cannabis.
That's right. So I just felt like...
And what does CBD stand for?
Cannabidiol.
Cannabidiol. Cannabidiol.
That's
okay.
right. Yeah.
And that is... What is it classified as? Like, what actually is it?
So it's a phytocannabinoid, which cannabinoids are essentially givers or catalysts to neurotransmitters that then give on signals to connect to receptors.
So they essentially modulate other neurotransmitters, either increasing their effectiveness or decreasing.
That's right. So either an agonist or an antagonist, they're catalysts.
Got it.
And they can work within the body. The body has an endocannabinoid system from head to toe. And that's why you see and hear that cannabis can help with so many different things, which we don't really know right now what those specific things are.
So it was in every cell of our body, essentially, right? Whether those cells or pretty much, is it every cell or pretty much every cell or every cell?
Pretty much every cell.
Pretty much every cell of the body. You have the cell's main functions, and the nervous system is based on neurotransmitters and an electrochemical reaction between synapses, right?
That's very good, yes.
Right? And then what you're saying is that the reason that the CBDs can be effective sometimes is because they will impact the levels of neurotransmitters that are either being released or that are not being reuptaken back into the system. So they either decrease or increase the levels of certain neurotransmitters. And that is essentially how we walk from here to there, see something. It's all based on neurotransmitters. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. It's a response, right? So through evolution, endocannabinoids came about through stress, through oxidation as a response. And so when you think of CBD, it's hard to say, oh, it helps with pain, or oh, it helps with Lyme's disease. It's not that specific.
Sure.
You know, the body is very holistic and it's very well connected. And the endocannabinoid system deserves much more value than we have it for in the medical industry, because it's more of a balance, a medical balance.
How long have we known about this system?
We've known about it since probably late 80s, early 90s, where we've really been giving credit to it medically, and I would say in Western medicine. But I mean, the Chinese, the Indians, they've been using this for, years and years and years, as early back as the 1600s. I think it's important to realize that cannabis was first used not just for spiritual uses, but for textiles.
Sure.
For grains.
Right.
That's right. So it was used for other things before we really started giving credit to it as a medicine. Got it.
Now, in terms of your own son, right? So you're faced with this, I couldn't even imagine I have kids, right? You must have been, were you just devastated? Were you like, was there a moment where you were paralyzed, or you never, just couldn't go on, you couldn't make sense of it? Or were you always more like, no, I know it sucks, but I'm going to take the empowered road here and try to do something about it? Was there ever a time when you weren't?
It's like living in an entirely different box where everything in life is going by and you're conscious to it, but it doesn't matter. All that matters is how can I help my kid? How can I take him out of this pain? Why him and not me, right? So I wouldn't say paralyzed, because I'm very much a thinker. I have other kids that I had to make sure could function, right, and a family. So I had to stay strong in that way. But yeah, it's an out-of-body experience, literally, where you're just day to day are just hoping for better.
Was there a moment when you were like, Eureka, I think I found something? Or was it simply just trial and error? Or was there a moment you're like, wait a second, you read something and you said, I think that might work?
Yeah, I was very determined, and it was, I found something, and I'm going to take this through, and I'm going to formulate. I'm going to use my own tools.
What did you find?
I found CBD, and I started reading mechanisms on how to deliver it to my son, right? So I think understanding that cannabis is awesome is just part of the game. The other part of the game is, how do we get it to actually create those functions we want it to? How do we get it to prevent seizures, really, right?
Crosses the blood-brain barrier?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So that was a big thing. How do I avoid drug interactions? This kid is on 7 medications. I don't want to mess that up, right?
I guess what I was saying is, there's CBDs, but aren't there, within that, there's CBDs, and there's many different types and varieties? And so was it just I think that Eureka, CBDs are going to help my son? Or, wait a second, there's a certain type of CBD and a certain strain of plant. And I read a study somewhere, and this study said that it tends to lower or increase the level of XYZ. And I think that would somehow alleviate my son's system and allow his brain then to do what brains can do, which is be very plastic and rewire themselves, almost pave the way for a rewiring of your son's brain.
Yeah, so as you can see, it can get very complicated and very diverse, because there's actually over 500 other cannabinoids that are just like CBD. Right. So utilizing CBD was kind of like the first step, right? In experiments, you take different phases. You look at the first step because it's very controlled. After you pass that first step, then you're able to say, okay, this didn't work. Okay, this made him throw up. Let me add in another cannabinoid, maybe THC. Maybe I do need a little psychoactivity here. Maybe I'm going to take something from a mushroom or a different reagent to kind of accelerate this process. So the first step was CBD. And I utilized it. I told nobody but my husband. I went cold turkey on all of my son's medications. And I just started pumping this formula through his G-tube, which I do not recommend anybody going cold turkey on any medication. And just, there was just this fire inside of me, and that's what I mean by being outside of my own space. I was just like, I'm doing this. I'm going to see what happens. I feel like it's safe. And that's why it was a good first step, the safety.
So you said you pumped what? Just pure CBD?
Yeah, so I had a formulated base, which was probably, the most proprietary thing about this formulation that allowed it to cross the blood-brain barrier, that would make sure that if I was still going to give him these drugs or wean him off these drugs, there shouldn't be any negative drug interaction. So it was very much a formulated base that would enhance the bioavailability of the CBD so that I felt like it could work right away.
And how long after you did that did you start to notice a difference or improvement in your son?
2 days.
2 days.
2 days. First thing was that eye that you guys asked me about in the beginning. His right eye had always just been like an overly lazy eye because he doesn't have the occipital lobe. His eye came into place. He just opened his eyes one morning. His eye was in place and he was looking left and right.
And what did you say, Gramps? Did you like, who noticed it? Was it your husband? Was it you?
I noticed, and I obviously told Gramps, but I would say through this entire process, I've never really gotten overly excited because I'm still, I'm essentially using my kid as an experiment. So it's like, okay, his eye's moving, but is he going to start having a seizure? So you're on your toes. You're like, okay. And I recorded everything almost as though this was a traditional scientific experiment. So 2 days, his eyes moving around, starting to move his fingers, which he couldn't even do that. And starting to move that. Then he's starting to move his head around. 2 months from that time, he started crawling. And I think the biggest thing there was he was not favoring left over right. And it was really thought that he was going to be paralyzed on the right side, missing so much of his left brain. So crawling, perfectly normal, starts pulling up. And really, I have 2 kids older than him. It really became this thing where this kid is trying to catch up in life almost. 14 months old, he starts walking. And we went to his first...
It's not that late.
It's not. We went to his first neurology appointment, follow up with his doctors and his surgeons. And the last time they had seen him, he was, not very responsive and couldn't do anything. And they told us that it's okay, just keep taking him to therapy, keep giving his medicine. This kid walked into the office and said hi to everybody. And all these doctors rushed into his room and they started writing on the board what medicines he's been on and what diet. And I was very solemn and just sat there. I wasn't like, no, you guys didn't do this. It was all me. I didn't do none of that. I didn't say anything. I just sat there and watched them go nuts and, imagine that they've created something. And then I just stopped them. I said, you guys, I took him off all medications at 7 months old. So I told them. And they were like, what? And they knew who I was, at that university, and they were colleagues of mine. But they basically, instead of really listening to what I had done, they had basically said, well, wow, he's a miracle. Congratulations. And you don't need us anymore.
And you said, how many months old?
14 months old. So just a little over 1.
And now how old is he today?
So Macario today is 5 years old. He is starting kindergarten on Tuesday. He has no developmental deficits, and he's no different than any other 5-year-old. It's still missing 40% of his brain.
So he walks normally?
Yep.
Talks?
Perfectly fine. Sings, actually.
No difference?
No difference. None.
That is amazing, right? There's not a lot of things that amaze me. That amazes me. And it would seem pretty clear. Well, let me ask you this, a different way. Have any doctor said, that's amazing, it's got nothing to do with CBD? You know that, right? Dr. Annabelle, it's a miracle, and sometimes you can't explain these spontaneous things, and whether you could call it God or the brilliance of the surgeon. I think you've given credit to the surgeons. That the surgeon was brilliant, and he spared more of his brain versus less, right? Then
Right.
you were actively involved in making sure that enough was left so that would be a shot. But have they ever told you that, sorry, it's just nothing to do with CBD?
Yes, I've heard it all. Right.
And what do they say? What do they, what's the basis for them saying that? Do they have a basis?
No, nobody really knows that, a lot of doctors like to say, oh, it's just one of those things. Every now and then a certain case comes up, someone gets cured of cancer, there's no explanation for it. I mean, this very well could be something that just came up, and it's a young developing brain.
But how would they explain that it was 2 days after you began giving them the CBD?
Right. Maybe one of the medications was inhibiting processes that wanted to come out. So good job. Maybe you took him off the right medication. I'm not sure which one of the 7 was doing that. But there are still a lot of colleagues of mine that don't believe it was the CBD.
What percentage of your colleagues believe CBD plays no role in this?
I'd say about 50-50.
50-50.
Mm-hmm. I've opened up a lot of their eyes to wanting to do more research. Mm-hmm. And hey, you should, look into this more. But they're very, very careful about coming out publicly and saying, man, that's got to be the cannabis. You did it. And CBD is a miracle worker.
All right, listen, this is a message from my favorite sponsor, NetSuite, an awesome company, part of Oracle, Larry Ellison, a legend. They're the best, right? So here's the deal. If you're a business owner, you don't need them to tell you that running a business is a tough thing to do, right? But you might be making it a lot harder on yourself than you have to be. Don't let QuickBooks and spreadsheets slow you down anymore. It's time to upgrade to NetSuite. Time to stop paying for multiple systems that don't give you even close to the amount of information you truly need to run your business the right way. Ditch the spreadsheets, all that old software you've outgrown. Now is the time to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle, the world's #1 cloud business system. NetSuite gives you the visibility, the control over your financials that you need, your HR, your inventory, e-commerce, and more, everything all in one spot, instantaneously. Whether you're doing $1 million or hundreds of millions in revenue a year, you can save a ton of time and a ton of money with NetSuite. You want to join over 24,000 companies who are using NetSuite right now. Let them show you how they'll benefit your business with a free product tour at netsuite.com/wolf. Schedule a free product tour now at netsuite.com/wolf. That's netsuite.com/wolf. All right, want to grow your business, diversify your content? You're not going to find a better tool out there than Melon for your live streaming needs. Blazing fast response time, low CPU usage, all available right in your browser. Go to melonapp.com/wolf and start streaming today. All right, how was your sleep last night? My guess probably wasn't the best. Look, I used to be exactly where you were at too, tossing and turning, too much on my mind, the list goes on. I look back to those days and I realized I felt like crap every day when I didn't get a good night's sleep. I did what I had to do, I worked hard, but I just was barely making it through the day. But there's a way out of that. There's a company, there's a product. It's Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers that helps change all that in a matter of days. Bioptimizers and I have partnered up for an exclusive deal for all of you out there to get 10% off when you visit magbreakthrough.com/Wolfsten and use the code Wolfsten10 at checkout. You got to give this a shot. There's no excuse to having crappy sleep unless you try this. Magnesium is known to improve sleep, and the way they go about with Mag Breakthrough is awesome. So visit magbreakthrough.com/Wolfsten and use the code Wolfsten10 today. I want to get into the whole business of marijuana, which I think is really interesting. I want to talk about the medical establishments' loathing for these types of treatments, why it's like that, how it really started. But just to focus on that, though, Have they ever said to you, take them off CBD?
No.
No, they never said that.
I don't think anybody's going to tell me what to do with my kid at this point.
What if someone, so I assume he's still taking it, right?
He is.
If someone said to you, listen, you really got to take him off that CBD, it's like, enough is enough. Gramps would go do his thing. Is that basically the story?
What people don't understand is, like, a lot of people take CBD now, right? And they're finding it's working for them for whatever it may be, acid reflux, headache, sleep, whatever it may be.
And there's no psychoactive effects.
There's not, right? I mean, CBD comes in and balances things that are imbalanced. Is simplest way to put it. And so a lot of people say to me, well, I don't want to get addicted to it. I don't want to have to depend on CBD. And I tell everyone, CBD is not foreign to us at all. It's believed.
It's like endorphins.
Right. It's not foreign to us. And again, it's not like you're adding an organ or a physical structure to your body. It's all part of this enzymatic pathway so that we have the best possible biosynthesis and homeostasis within our body, if that makes sense. It's just, it comes in and helps us just balance processes.
Homeostasis, meaning things stay generally the same.
At a balance.
But not static. It's
right.
Dynamic equilibrium, right? Things are, if your body temperature is supposed to be 98.6, it's never really 98.6, it's 98.8.
Exactly.
If it goes down, you heat back up. If it's too hot, you cool back down. Right? So the body's essentially, through evolution, is designed to maintain homeostasis, right? So your theory with CBD is that CBD paves the way or enhances the body's ability to maintain homeostasis.
Exactly.
In terms of your son's condition, what do you think on a molecular level, without getting too much in the weeds, what was it actually doing to your son in his brain?
First, I think it was really inhibiting bad processes to happen. So cells want to communicate with each other, and sometimes when that connection cannot follow through, then bad things happen, such as seizures. So I think the CBD kept those connections very clean. I think it kept the inflammation down, and I think it just enabled for the brain to do what it wants to do, which was compensate for that loss, to promote neuroplasticity, which means to, rewire. Once parts of the brain say, oh, the occipital lobe's not there. All right, well, this part of the brain, then you've got to promote that function instead.
Have you ever put your son under a functional magnetic resonance imager and seen his brain in action?
That is so next to do. Obviously, I've done a still MRI very recently. And
for those who don't know, functional magnetic resonance imaging is when you actually have the brain working and you're imaging it while it's in function. So you can see, I think it's through the uptake of glucose and how much energy, you can see what part of the brains are being activated, what parts are passive. So if you show someone a picture, then you'll see in that instant the occipital lobe will light up like a Christmas tree, right?
Yep.
And then very quickly go to the judgment center in the frontal lobe, and you're like, it's amazing, and you see the brain functioning. And I wonder what it will look like in your son's brain when he picks up his right. Is it which is missing, his left side or right?
When he uses his right side, yeah.
So his left side is missing of his brain.
That's right.
And this left manages the right side. So if he picks up something with his right hand,
what is controlling
what's happening there? I'm guessing. My guess is you're going to see the exact mirror image on the left side, on his right side, that would normally functioning for the right side. Wouldn't you think?
Maybe. I mean,
or would you see a different part of that's left over on the left side still functioning? I wonder. I'm going to bet that it's the right side doing double work for both.
I've been fighting for an fMRI, which is obviously not common and is very new. I think UCLA is one of the only places that have it in America right now. So I've been fighting to get an fMRI for him, and have some friends that will probably push that through for me. So that'll be interesting, because I'm obviously very curious.
So for those of you who are watching this on video, you've seen some of the pictures here of our son, and handsome boy, amazing, right? Those of you who are listening, maybe you want to check it out at some point later on YouTube or Instagram or somewhere else. Let's get now into the aftermath. So this, obviously, if it was me, I'd become the foremost evangelist for medicinal marijuana. I mean, so I could see why you're so passionate, and I guess it's probably your mission now, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it has been a journey. So this is, 4 to 5 years in since this has happened with my son. And I've had to learn the business of cannabis. I've had to learn where the science really is and where I would thrive using my credibility and the story. And it's just been such a journey because we focus so much on products and the fluff and the branding. And I'm like, wait a minute, let's do some mouse studies.
Right.
Doing these mice studies aren't going to make you any money, Dr. Annabelle. You need to make us CBD-infused tampons, And so I've been offered everything, you name it, every celebrity, name them, and they've wanted to work with me. And I think I owe it to my son and other families that are looking for something. And the plant itself that can create medicines, I mean, hundreds of different medicines that are specific to specific conditions. I owe it to that to provide the substance to the industry.
So why did you choose Flora as the company to be involved with? What was it about them?
I chose Flora because they listened. Throughout this journey, obviously, I've met a lot of people that have said, well, great, be our scientific advisor and we'll do this and that for you. And really, they just wanted me to be their face and share my story and, get them some attention. Flora listened to the gaps in the cannabis industry that I thought, and I still feel, are going to be very relevant with possible legislation of the marijuana plant federally. I think it being a medicine is obviously going to be very important. It's called medical cannabis. But we still lack scientific research to really put it in the category as a medicine.
Why is that, you think?
It became a trend so fast, right? And again, people were able to sell it and make awesome brands out of it and create strains that can make people really high. So the medicinal part of it just wasn't the focus, not right away. But now that we're going to start talking about it as a medicine, if I'm going to go talk to a cardiologist, I've got to have more than telling him, yeah, just tell your patients go to this dispensary and pick the one that is the purplest. I mean, there's got to be more substance to that. We have to back it with studies. We have to understand the mechanism molecularly, right? We've got to do that work. And Flora, they basically promised me that they would support that research, and,
Sure.
and I promised them that it would be worth their while.
With Flora, do you think that they manufacture the key? What I liked about it was that it was in Colombia, and what I heard, the price per gram, I was blown away. They're growing it at like 6 cents a gram, and they're
Crazy.
also growing it outdoors.
Yes.
In the richest soil and the cleanest air. How much do you think that matters in terms of versus the greenhouse? I feel like on some level, and I don't know, but this rush to get, as you said, the most potent strain of THC. So you take one of your eyeballs, turn around your head, and they have that shit now. It's like 30% THC. It's insane. And you look at the stuff and it looks that potent. You're like, it's like purple hairs and green elves coming out dancing on the leaves, right? It's insane, right? But how does it impact the whole plant when it's so stunted like that with this hydroponic indoors versus the richest soil in the world in Colombia, volcanic soil, most clean air, beautiful sunshine? Is there a difference in the plant?
We are going to work to define that, but I absolutely think so. I mean, through foods, through anything organic and natural, you are able to achieve the abundance of what is encompassed by that plant or by that animal. It's virgin soil in Colombia, not something that we see anywhere in the world, maybe other than different parts of Africa. They have 12 and a half hours of sunlight all year round. They have humidity from the valleys, and they have volcano. I mean, it's the perfect.
So why do they have the best coffee? Why is their coffee
situation.
the best coffee in the world?
That could be why.
Right?
Yep,
I'm saying,
that
why is
could
the
be
best
why.
tasting? It's like an interesting parallel that they grow the greatest coffee, right?
Right.
And so the price, because of that, the energy is free, the
Yep.
land is abundant, right? So they have this, incredibly low cost. And what attracted me to it is as a businessman, before I met you, and I met you and I was like, my friend Stan's like, you gotta meet Dr. Annabelle, and I was blown away when I met you. But before that, I was shocked when I told people what they were growing it for, 6 cents. People were saying, impossible, no way, it can't be done. And the reason I think that's important is because I think at some point in time, when it is made federally legal, the business is gonna collapse margins. And it's gonna come down to who can grow the most high quality marijuana, whether it's for medicinal or recreational purposes, who can grow that at the right price. And if you can't, you're going to be out of business. Like, like in the tobacco business, if you're in the tobacco world, you're probably, you have it down to such a science. You have your economies of scale so well established. Or if you're making alcohol, you're down to like, what do you pay for every, little piece of the process, whether it's the advertising, the bottling, whether it's the growing of the hops or whatever you're doing, whether it's scotch or a vodka, whatever product is. You don't just like, oh yeah, we're really great. We have the best stuff and we pay 3 times more than the guy next door. You're out of business. Right. So I believe that all of these smaller cannabis plays where they're just paying massive money are going to be in serious trouble. Many of them, not all of them for sure, when regulation in a healthy way comes in and it's federally legal. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I always say quality over quantity. It's nice and everything that you can grow so much weed under those conditions. But what really brought me to the company was the quality of the cannabis that's coming out of it. There's a lot of different technologies right now. I mean, I've seen people ask me to vet all kinds of stuff, and I've seen all these different technologies that are phenomenal, but then it takes away from the natural plant. It almost causes, synthetic plants or fake plants to come out of these technologies. And so to be able to grow quality weed at this kind of abundance, I mean, you're right. There's going to be a lot of companies that when federal legalization happens are going to have to fix what they're doing, or they're just going to have to go away.
Why do you think marijuana was so stigmatized for so many years? It goes back to when I was a kid, and you had this movie that you heard about called Reefer Madness. Have you seen it?
Yes,
I
have.
It's the funniest thing ever.
It's
like
funny.
This person smokes one little joint, and then it was probably 1% THC, like barely. And he's like, and he goes and he just starts stabbing and killing people, right? Sounds a lot more like alcohol than marijuana, right? But like typically the truth of marijuana is you smoke too much, you must sit on the couch and eat potato chips. So what was it that about cannabis that had it in this box where it's the evil devil's weeds, dangerous, shouldn't be grown anywhere, must be eradicated? What was it about?
That's super controversial, but I don't know why leaders of the economies create fear. Cannabis was utilized in place of, cotton wasn't even around, and cannabis was used from hemp. You can make rope, and it's the sturdiest rope that you can ever create out of any textile or fabric. Upholstery in cars now are using hemp. And if you use this all along, you're just doing better for the earth. You're using breathable material. And what that means is if you create a house of hempcrete opposed to our regular concrete, you're creating a home that is never going to need air conditioning or heat, because it's giving off oxygen and it's absorbing all that CO2. So if you go to Italy, there are hempcrete houses from like 400 years ago that looks like they were just built. And so I don't know why it was taken away from us. And when THC came about and people were becoming high, okay, let's use that to just get rid of the entire cannabis species, including hemp, in the early 1900s. That's super controversial, but I'm just happy now that maybe we're turning the corner.
Do you think that in the next 24 months it will be legal in the United States on a federal level?
I do. I think we're getting really close, working with a lot of different associations that are writing the bill and writing it in a way that, government parties will accept. So focusing on research and maybe not making it recreational right off the bat. And focusing on quality and standards and ensuring that people are creating and manufacturing out of CGMP facilities, the same kind of standards you would expect out of pharmaceutical manufacturing, because what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of these drugs on the market today, those components are plant derived. But by the time they get to the lab, they're powderish and, they're just another reagent or a chemical. But our most famous chemotherapy that's in every single cancer treatment comes from a plant.
Right. Taxol, right?
That's right. Paclitaxel.
Yeah.
Very good.
I know. I even know where it comes from. It's from Australia, isn't it?
I think it is Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember the early days when that was coming out. I forgot the name of the plant, but first used taxamycin.
Taxamycin.
Mycin, yeah. It was used for breast cancer, late stage breast cancer.
Breast cancer and pancreatic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So now it's in a derivative of it is in every single chemotherapy.
Do you see a time when CBDs will not be sold in gas stations and convenience stores, and where it really has been sort of reined back into a far more controlled structure where you only buy it at either the drugstore or health food stores, or in some way where it's you know what you're getting, or you think it's the genie's out of the bottle, it's too late?
Yeah, I think there is a place for all of the cannabinoids, CBD and CBN. They all have different functional roles, and I think there's a place for them in the recreational space. But medical is just very different. I would hope that people that are putting it in ice creams or sodas, or that they are actually providing quality product to people. And I think that those that aren't right now, I think those companies will have a hard time and will have to go away, because there are going to be different requirements when legalization happens that you have to have with your products. But that doesn't take away the fact that you could have a CBD infused soda in a gas station, right? So I just think that there's different lanes. My focus is obviously the medical side and the science of it, which is like the longer game. So hopefully we can make some wellness products that are of really good quality down the road that can go in Whole Foods and places like that. So yeah, I think the cat is out of the bag, but just hoping for better quality amongst the industry.
What percentage of the products out there that are supposedly CBD are actually containing CBD in the right amounts and it's pure, and how much is just bullshit?
I don't know the exact number, but we're in California right now. Go to a store and get 10 products. I'll test them, and maybe one
will actually have what it's supposed to have.
Right. It's that bad.
Right.
Yeah.
So how does Flora Growth work? What do you do? So you're in charge of medical research there.
Yep.
Do you supervise all that sort of stuff, quality control, all that sort of thing? What's your role there outside of just being the spokesperson? Yeah,
so outside of being a spokesperson, I'll create scientific initiatives to collaborate with different governments and different schools to get the studies done, right? So giving to the industry by coming up with the molecular pathways and defining all of these different cannabinoids, and also creating products out of these different pathways that we know we can actually support their claims, right? So helping them with that, obviously helping them to ensure that they are growing under the right kind of conditions. I mean, is 12 and a half hours necessarily the best way to grow this kind of medicine? So as we start looking into the different kind of strains that they have, are there different conditions based on what the output is that we want to actually have come out of it? So I'm doing a lot for them, just starting out. I've only been with them since May. So right now we're just creating these initiatives, and I'm just still learning a lot about the company itself.
How about the manufacturing side? Is everything with the company manufactured at the highest level? So you make sure that, you supervise that, or you're aware of where they're manufacturing and making sure that it's right levels, right quality?
Yeah, so in the cannabis industry, we love to use the term seed to sale. And so all the way from the seed to the soil, from the harvesting to the extraction process, and then on to the manufacturing of the actual products. Flora's done it the right way. I mean, they've taken the time and the money, put in the investment, and got the certifications around their manufacturing to make sure they're up to par. I think they're very much anticipating legalization,
Right.
and they are looking to supply the world, not just Colombia, obviously. And, you know, when you're importing something into a lot of these countries, you've got to have proper paperwork to back it up. And so they've made sure that they've held themselves to the highest standard.
So
I will give them that.
that's a good point. No, that's a good point, because I believe that thing I liked most about Flora was not just that it was 6 cents. It was that it was a global play. They weren't looking to just
Absolutely.
supply it for one state or 2 states. They're positioning themselves. They're playing the long game
Yep.
to put the right protocols and controls in place so that when the dominoes start to tumble, they can
We're here.
export everywhere. They just had their announcement recently with Australia. Doing
Yep.
something with Australia. Are
Yep.
you involved in that whole initiative in Australia?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much involved in every initiative because I'm kind of responsible for making sure that it's done in the highest of quality, and responsible to make sure that, hey, you guys are going to do a study with us, and
Right.
you're not just going to take the plant and sell it, that you actually care about putting some research behind it, and giving your community the best possible cannabis.
Do you see a time when the average doctor looks at this as a prescription of first choice in cases when it should be?
Yes, I do. Obviously the younger doctors are already looking in that direction. And, in Tennessee, absolutely not. It's not there yet. But here in California and in places where cannabis has been around, there are doctors that, really do look to cannabis as a first choice, especially when you're talking about pain and opioids and replacing that painkiller with cannabis.
Awesome. All right. Well, listen, Dr. Annabelle, you are amazing.
Thank
I
you.
could keep you on this show all day, but we got to go because there's always going to be an ending to some point. But
That's right.
listen, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. You're amazing. And I'd love to have you back again, maybe in like 6 months from now. And let's see the progress, both with Flora, on the other things that you're working on. And maybe I can meet your son as well.
You will. Thank you, Jordan.
All
Happy
right.
to be here.
Everyone, Dr. Annabelle, listen, make sure that you share this podcast with all your friends. Everyone should really listen to this and share it, subscribe to this. I think this is one of the most exciting things going on right now in medicine. It's a long overdue movement to start actually using what is a plant that's been growing all over the world, that has receptors all over our body, and it's been proven, as you see, in many cases, that profound impacts on our health. So I'm glad it's happening, and I'm glad to be part of that. So take care, have a great day, and we'll talk again next week.